Triplets save desperate billionaire from bridge jump. He's the father who abandoned them. Rain didn't fall, it slashed. Cold needles from a grey sky, soaking Tajir Monroe's designer coat, clinging to his skin like judgment. The wind moaned through the steel skeleton of the Langston Bridge, 400 feet above the churning Harlem River below. It used to be the kind of view he admired from penthouse windows. Tonight it was the last thing he planned to see. He stepped closer to the edge. Dress shoes slick on the rail, 1 foot over, one hand clenched on a folded photo. His thumb rubbed the edges. It was crinkled and faded from his wallet. A face he never forgot. Kendra, her eyes furious and glowing, and 3 little boys, nearly identical, all smiling, all strangers. His sons, triplets, 7 years, a lifetime. His chest ached as thunder rolled above him like God himself was dragging furniture across the heavens. Taj took one last breath and jumped, but something stopped him mid-air. A hand, small, tight, desperate, grabbed his wrist. "Don't!" The voice was tiny, breathless, strong. Taj slammed back against the cold metal. His body jerked up, eyes wide, and there, gripping his wrist with all the fire of heaven, was a child. A boy. No, 3 of them, all staring at him, all looking like her. "Zion, hold tight!" one shouted. "I got him!" The first boy, Zion, yelled, face red, feet slipping on the slick concrete. "I'll help!" The second boy, Zaire, sharp-eyed and fierce, lunged forward and caught Taj's other hand. The third one, Zane, quiet, trembling, grabbed Zion's waist and anchored them all. Taj couldn't breathe. He wasn't falling. He was flying backwards, pulled up by 3 small bodies. A security guard from the nearby campus ran over, panicked. 2 tourists screamed. Tires screeched on wet pavement. Taj collapsed back onto the ground, coughing, stunned, soaking wet. Zion stared at him, right into his eyes. "Why were you jumping, mister?" Taj didn't answer. He couldn't, because the 3 boys who saved his life were his. Minutes later, sirens howled as an ambulance pulled up. The bridge filled with flashing red and blue. The boys stood close, shivering under one of the EMT's jackets. A woman burst through the crowd, her voice slicing through chaos. "Zion! Zaire! Zane! Kendra! Same voice, same power!" She looked exactly the same, except stronger. Hair twisted into a high bun, eyes sharp and full of fire. She dropped to her knees, hugging all 3 boys in one sweep. Then she looked up and saw him. "You!" One word, a whisper dipped in gasoline. He tried to speak. "Kendra!" Slap! Her palm cracked across his face before she could stop herself. "Where the hell have you been?" Her voice cracked, not from anger, but something deeper. He said nothing, not yet, not when everything that mattered was right in front of him, and still so far away. The officer stepped forward. "Sir, we need to ask some questions. We had a report of a possible..." "He wasn't trying," Zion cut in quickly. "He was about to fall, but we stopped him." The cop nodded slowly. "Still, protocol says we have to take him in for evaluation." Kendra looked at Taj like he was poison, but Zion's small hand gripped hers. "Mommy, can we talk to him again?" Kendra stared at her son, at all 3, and at the man who left her broken and alone, now kneeling in the rain, his face haunted. She didn't answer, not yet, but as the EMTs loaded Taj into the ambulance, the boys watched him go like they'd just pulled a man from hell. Back at their small 2-bedroom apartment in the Bronx, the triplets sat on the couch, wrapped in blankets. Zion looked up from the photo he'd taken from Taj's wallet, the same one Taj had almost died holding. "He's our dad," Zion whispered. Zaire crossed his arms. "So what?" He left. "We don't need him." Zane held the photo gently. "But we saved him." A silence filled the room, heavy, deep. Kendra stood in the hallway, hand pressed against the wall, her heartbeat loud in her ears. Because somewhere inside her, a door that had been closed for 7 years just opened, and it terrified her. Taj reached for the worn, folded photo beside him, the one that nearly went into the water with him. "I carried this everywhere," he said softly. "For years. I didn't even know their names. I just knew I left the only real thing I ever had behind." Kendra's expression didn't soften. Her arms were folded so tight they ached, but she held her ground. "You didn't just leave me, Taj," she said, voice low and firm. "You left them. You walked away before they even opened their eyes." "I was alone. I had to figure everything out. 3 bottles, 3 bassinets, 1 broken heart." He nodded slowly, eyes never leaving hers. "I'm not here to excuse it. I can't fix the past. I was scared. Not of you, of me. I didn't think I could be the kind of man they deserved." Kendra blinked, hard. "You were right." Silence. Outside, the triplets waited in the hallway with Auntie May, who was pacing like she was ready to march into that room and drag Taj out by the ear. "Y'all better not feel sorry for him," she muttered, hands on hips. "We don't," Zaire said quickly, crossing his arms. "He looked sad," Zane whispered. Zion held the drawing he'd made earlier, a stick-figure family with a man added beside the mother. "I just didn't want him to fall," Zion said quietly. May stopped pacing. Her hard gaze softened as she looked down at the 3 boys. She sighed. "Well, that's 'cause y'all got good hearts. That don't mean he gets to come back just 'cause he's sorry." Back inside, Kendra sat at the edge of a chair now, but her voice remained calm and even. "You said you only found out about them recently. How?" Taj looked up. "Someone sent me a photo. No name, no return address. Just a shot of you holding 3 little boys. I started digging. That's how I learned about Zion's asthma, Zaire's school record, Zane's art contest. I know I missed everything. I missed their lives." His voice cracked. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to see them once, before I couldn't anymore." Kendra blinked sharply and stood. "I'm not here for reunions. I'm here to protect my children. If you want to be in their lives, it's not about what you want. It's about what they need. And right now," she opened the door, "they need stability, not a ghost from the past." As she stepped into the hallway, the boys looked up. Zion's eyes were hopeful. Zaire's were guarded. Zane clutched the drawing tighter. Kendra knelt in front of them, brushing Zion's damp curls from his forehead. "Yes," she said softly. They blinked. "Yes, he's your father." None of them said anything at first. Then Zane whispered, "Is he gonna leave again?" Kendra paused, heart pounding. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But I won't." Taj sat alone as the nurse returned with a clipboard. "You'll be discharged in the morning. Your family left." He nodded slowly, then turned toward the window, where the city lights stretched out like a galaxy of second chances. He didn't deserve forgiveness, but maybe, just maybe, he had earned the right to try. The polished floors of Oakview Counseling Center gleamed like they were judging Taj's every step. He sat stiffly on the soft leather couch, surrounded by pale walls and quiet air. No suits, no boardrooms, no bodyguards, just consequences. Across from him, Dr. Layla Roan tapped her pen gently against a yellow notepad. She didn't look impressed, or afraid. That was new. "So," she said, "why are you here, Mr. Monroe?" He adjusted his collar, though there was no tie. "Court-mandated evaluation. They want to see if I'm stable enough to reintegrate." Her eyebrow lifted. "And are you?" Taj smirked faintly. "Honestly, I don't know." She didn't smile. "Tajir Monroe, former billionaire, CEO, Once on the cover of Black Business Monthly, now in therapy, barely staying afloat. What happened? He paused. The short answer? Trust. I trusted the wrong people, left the right ones. Layla leaned in. Let's talk about the right ones, the woman, the children. He glanced away. I don't even know them yet. I left before they were born. And why is that? Taj hesitated, then finally said, because I was scared I'd be like him. Flashback, age 11. A young Taj sits alone on a stoop in Chicago, waiting. A birthday cake melts in the sun. No one comes. His father never showed up, not once. Back in the present, Taj's fists clenched. I told myself I'd never be like him. Then I disappeared, the second things got hard. I became the thing I hated. Layla scribbled. Well, that's a starting point. Meanwhile, at a small art classroom in the Bronx, Zion, Zaire, and Zane stood near the window, whispering. Do you think he really wants to see us? Zane asked. Zaire shrugged. Who cares? We saved him. He owes us. Zion shook his head. He looked lonely. They exchanged a look, then turned to their teacher. Miss Tyra, Zion asked politely, can we go to the nurse? Zane doesn't feel good. Tyra raised a brow, but nodded. 5 minutes later, the boys slipped out the side gate, holding a folded-up address they'd copied from the hospital paper Kendra left on the table. Back at the counseling center, the front desk buzzed. Mr. Monroe, you have visitors. Layla frowned. Taj stood up, confused. Down the hall, 3 small faces peeked in the doorway. Zion spoke first. You said you wanted to know us, so here we are. Taj's throat tightened. He knelt. Zaire crossed his arms, guarded. Zane peeked around his brothers, holding a folded drawing. We're not staying long, Zaire muttered. We just wanted to see if you were real. Taj nodded. That's fair. Zion walked forward slowly. Why were you so sad that day? Taj took a slow breath. Because I thought I lost everything that mattered. Zion didn't say anything, just stepped closer and wrapped his arms around Taj's shoulders in a small, surprising hug. Zaire didn't move, but Zane finally held out the paper. It was a new drawing, 4 figures, Kendra, the triplets, and Taj, standing a little off to the side, the word maybe written above the picture. Later that day, Kendra stood at the counter of her cafe, organizing receipts, when her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She opened the message. You let him see the boys? Thought you had better judgment. SC. Her heart dropped. She deleted the message immediately. But something told her. This wasn't over. Taj hadn't just brought himself back into their lives. He'd brought everything that came for him too. In the shadows of a sleek corporate tower, Silas Cole leaned back in his leather chair. A manila file rested on his desk. Inside, photos of Taj with the triplets, one at the counseling center, one outside the school. He smiled. Family man now, huh? He murmured. Let's see how long that lasts. Saturday morning. Bronx apartment. Sunlight spilled across the living room floor, where cereal bowls clinked and cartoons murmured in the background. But the triplets weren't watching. They sat in a tight triangle on the living room rug. Zion, Zaire, and Zane, deep in thought, like they were plotting a mission. Zion placed a notebook between them, flipping to a blank page. We gotta decide something, he whispered. If he really wants to be our dad, we can't just make it easy. Zaire nodded, arms crossed. Yeah, let's test him. Zane hesitated, chewing on his pencil eraser. But what if he's not ready? Then we'll know, Zion said. But we gotta give him a real shot first. They called it the Dad Challenge Plan. Each of them would give him a secret test, one he couldn't prepare for. Zion's test, time. Would Taj show up when it mattered? Zair's test, truth, would he be honest if pushed? Zane's test, heart, would he care about the things that weren't about money? They sealed the pact with a handshake and a pinky swear, then got to work. Meanwhile, downtown clinic Kendra sat across from Layla Roan, trying to keep her cool. So, you're saying they went to see him without me knowing? Kendra's voice was low, tight. Layla nodded carefully. They didn't tell you? No. Layla leaned in, sympathetic. They're curious, but they still look to you first. They're not choosing him over you, Kendra. They're just trying to understand who he is. Kendra sighed, rubbing her temples. It's not that I want to keep them apart. I don't want them hurt. I've spent every day for 7 years making sure they never had to feel abandoned. Layla nodded. Then you're going to have to be part of this next chapter, whether Taj is in it or not. Sunday, Public Park, Harlem Taj, stood at the edge of a small playground in jeans and a hoodie, holding a paper bag of juice boxes. He looked out of place, not because of where he was, but because of what he wasn't anymore. No guards, no polished image, just a man trying to show up. Zion waved him over to the bench. You're late, Zaire said immediately. I brought apple juice, Taj replied. Still late. Zane giggled. They sat in a small, awkward circle under a tall tree. Zion's test began. Okay, he said casually. Our school has a project coming up. Family Day. You gotta come, no matter what. When is it? Thursday morning, 9 sharp. You gonna be there? Taj nodded. Yes. No assistants. No driver. Just you. Taj smiled faintly. You have my word. Zion scribbled something in his notebook. Test 1. Assigned. That night, Westside Cafe. Kendra locked the cafe's front door, exhausted, only to find a bouquet of sunflowers sitting on the steps. No note, but she knew. She stepped back inside, her expression unreadable. Auntie May peeked in from the kitchen. More flowers? From him? Kendra nodded slowly. I didn't say he could show up here. May took off her apron. You know, every time he shows up, you get that look. What look? The one you had back when you were still picking out baby names with hearts in your eyes. Kendra rolled her eyes. That look left 7 years ago. Maybe. May smiled. But I think it might be knocking again. Elsewhere, Silas Cole's penthouse office. Silas leaned over a map of the Bronx, red pins marking addresses. He's spending time with the boys, Bria James said, tapping her nails on the desk. He's trying to rebuild his image, Silas said calmly. Which makes this the perfect time to break it again. Bria frowned. What's the move? Silas smirked. Something that makes him look unstable. A little public misunderstanding. Bria grinned slowly. And we'll make sure those kids see it. In their shared bedroom, the triplets huddled around a flashlight, going over their plan. Zaire grinned. Tomorrow I ask him a hard question. No lying, no changing the subject. What if he gets mad? Zane asked. Then we'll really know, Zion said. Outside their window, thunder rolled low in the distance. Inside, 3 hearts beat in quiet sync, brave, uncertain, but ready. Monday morning, Westside Cafe. The bell above the door jingled as Kendra stepped into her cafe, the warm aroma of freshly ground coffee beans and cinnamon rolls filling the air. The sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a golden hue on the worn wooden tables and mismatched chairs, a mix of elegance and comfort that was all Kendra. This cafe had been her dream, her sanctuary. It was where she fought, where she healed, and where she built a life for her boys. But this morning, that calm was shattered the moment she walked through the door. Sitting at one of the tables near the back was Bria James, Her perfectly styled hair gleamed under the cafe's soft lighting, and her tailored suit screamed power. She sat with a cup of tea in front of her, a smug smile playing on her lips as Kendra walked past, her eyes narrowing at the sight of her former rival. Bria looked up, her eyes locking with Kendra's. Well, well, if it isn't the woman who thinks she's earned everything by herself. Kendra didn't stop. She kept walking, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. You're wasting your time, Bria. I'm not interested in whatever you're selling. Bria's smirk widened. Oh, I'm not selling anything. She let the words linger, her tone sweet and poisonous. I'm just here to remind you that some things don't change. And if you're smart, you'll start listening to the signs that are already there. Kendra set her bag down and turned to face her. What are you talking about? Bria took a slow sip of her tea, her eyes never leaving Kendra's face. I'm talking about Tajir. Or should I say, your Tajir. Kendra's pulse quickened, but she didn't let Bria see her anxiety. What about him? Oh, don't pretend you don't know. Bria's voice dropped, cold and cutting. You think he's really back for them? Or maybe it's just because he's got nothing left. No company, no reputation, and certainly no loyalty. His empire's gone, Kendra, and now he's crawling back to you. Stop, Kendra warned, her voice low but steady. I've heard all your games before. You can't intimidate me with your words. Bria leaned in, lowering her voice just enough to make Kendra lean in. I'm not here to intimidate you. I'm here to remind you that this reunion of yours might not be as peaceful as you think. Taj isn't who he was before. He's broken, and you know as well as I do that people like him don't change. They only pretend. Kendra's chest tightened, but she swallowed the knot in her throat. He's trying, Bria. I don't care what you say. He's trying. Bria let out a bitter laugh. Trying? Please. You're as naive as ever. Look, I don't care what you do, Kendra. I really don't. But you should be careful. You're about to put your whole family in danger. And for what? A man who walked out on you and your kids, and is now a shell of himself. Kendra's breath hitched. She had spent 7 years doing everything she could to build a life for her sons, to give them something stable, something real. The last thing she needed was someone like Bria, someone who had never cared for anything except power, telling her that Taj was some lost cause. I'm not listening to you, Kendra said, her voice stronger now. Taj is their father. No matter what you say, he's their family, and I will never stop protecting them. Bria's eyes flashed with something darker now, something calculating. She took a slow sip of her tea and placed the cup back on the table with a deliberate clink. I warned you, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just remember, Kendra, I'll be watching. Later that evening, Monroe's counseling center. Taj sat in a sterile waiting room, the sound of his breathing echoing in the empty space. He had been coming to these sessions for the last few days, trying to rebuild himself from the man he once was. But every time he walked through that door, he felt the weight of the past pressing against him, and tonight was no different. The door opened and Dr. Layla Roan stepped in. She smiled at him, but her eyes held a quiet concern. You're early, she said, sitting down across from him. Taj shrugged. I don't know how to keep wasting time. I'm trying to fix what I can. Layla didn't respond immediately. Instead, she studied him for a moment, taking in the fatigue in his posture, the tightness around his eyes. Talk to me, she said softly. What's on your mind? Taj exhaled, his fingers tracing the edge of the coffee cup on the table. Kendra, the triplets. I don't know where to start with them. Every time I try to show up, I feel like I'm not enough, like I'll never be enough. Layla leaned forward slightly. Why do you think that? I left them. I left her. For years. I told myself I was doing the right thing, but now I see them, and I can't undo the damage I've done." He paused, eyes dropping to his lap. "I don't know how to prove I'm different. How do you prove you're worthy of the people you've hurt most?" Layla's gaze softened. "You don't prove anything, Tajir. You show up, every day, in every way. You become the man you want to be. But it's not about perfection. It's about showing them that you're here, that you're trying, that you're not going anywhere again." Taj nodded slowly. "I don't think they'll ever forgive me." "They don't have to forgive you today," Layla said. "Forgiveness takes time, but you can show them, by the choices you make now, that you are not the man who left. You are the man who's here, who's going to be there, for them, for Kendra, for yourself." Taj let the words sink in. It wasn't a magic fix, but it was a starting point. Back in the Bronx, Kendra's apartment. Kendra had just finished tidying up the living room when she heard a knock at the door. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened it. Standing in the doorway was Zion. "Mum," he said quietly, holding a piece of paper in his hand. "I need to talk to you." She frowned. "What is it, baby?" Zion stepped inside and handed her the paper. It was a drawing, a family picture, and in the center was Taj, holding their hands. "You said he's our dad," Zion said. "But is he really?" Kendra looked down at the picture. It was simple, innocent, and everything she had been trying to protect them from. "I'm trying," she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "I'm really trying, Zion." He didn't respond. He just hugged her. The city lights flickered in the distance, and Kendra stood by the window, staring out at the skyline. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if Taj would be the father they needed, or if they were all going to be swept away by the ghosts of the past. But one thing was certain, she wasn't backing down. Tuesday morning, family court, downtown Manhattan. The courthouse lobby buzzed with low conversations and shuffling footsteps. Security guards stood at attention, marble floors gleaming beneath hurried shoes. It was the kind of place people entered with hopes high and left, with their futures rewritten. Tajir Munro stood just inside the courtroom, dressed in a tailored charcoal grey suit. Not a flashy billionaire's armor, but something clean, modest, and presentable. The sparkle of empire had long since faded. Now he wore the look of a man rebuilding brick by brick under the full weight of the past. Across the aisle, Bria James sauntered in with her legal team in tow. Dressed in all white with gold accents, she looked every bit the executive powerhouse she claimed to be. Her smile was sharp, the kind used for photographs and destruction alike. "Nice of you to show," she said smoothly as she passed Taj, not bothering to stop. "Hope you brought something better than regret this time." Taj didn't flinch. "I brought truth. That's more than you've ever carried." She chuckled under her breath and disappeared into the courtroom. Courtroom 3B. Preliminary hearing. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman named Honorable Judith Ramsey, adjusted her glasses as she glanced through the files before her. "This is a preliminary hearing to determine whether Mr. Munro has a legitimate claim to petition for a formal corporate inquiry and shareholder rights review regarding his former enterprise, Munro Dynamics," she began. Taj's attorney, Marcus Hill, stood. "Your Honor, my client was ousted under questionable circumstances involving forged documentation, coercion, and unethical practices led by Ms. James and Mr. Silas Colbria's lawyer immediately objected. Those are serious accusations without evidence." Marcus slid a folder across the table. "We'll let the timeline and bank records speak." The judge took the folder and began reading. Bria glanced toward Taj, unfazed, but something in her eyes flickered. Outside the courtroom, hallway break. Kendra arrived, walking briskly in a cream blazer and jeans. She spotted Taj leaning against a hallway pillar, a file clutched in one hand, tension in his shoulders. "Taj," she said. He looked up quickly, surprised to see her. "You came." "I'm not here for you," she said quietly. "I'm here because Bria James is dangerous, and I need to know what you're walking into." He sighed. "I'm trying to get a piece of my life back, not for me, for the boys. I'm not trying to win anything else." Kendra folded her arms. "So why now? Why fight for a company you already lost?" "Because Silas Cole is using it to clean money through fake subsidiaries. Because Bria's using it to buy off influencers and media to smear anyone who crosses her. That company's dirty now, and my name is still stamped on it." Kendra blinked. "So this isn't about power, it's about clearing your name. It's about protecting them." Taj's eyes darkened. "Before this reaches you and the boys. Meanwhile, Westside Cafe." Auntie May was pouring coffee for a customer when the bell over the door jingled, and Silas Cole walked in, smooth as ever, in a silk suit and sunglasses. "Well," May said, eyeing him up and down, "ain't you the ghost we never asked to haunt us?" Silas grinned. "Pleasure's mine, Miss May." She didn't offer a seat. "I came to have a conversation," he said coolly, "about Kendra's future. I hear she's still attached to Taj." May narrowed her eyes. "She's attached to her children and to her peace, both of which you are disturbingly bad for." Silas reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. May frowned. He slid it across the counter. "Just a little insight. You might want her to read it." May didn't touch the envelope. "I see what you're doing, and I don't like it." "You don't have to like it," Silas said with a wink. "You just have to understand it." He turned and walked out, the cafe door closing behind him like a sealed vault. Back at court, post-hearing Judge Ramsey looked up from the file. "This court is not currently in a position to rule on full ownership restoration, but I am granting Mr. Monroe a temporary discovery period. You have 60 days to present conclusive documentation of foul play." Taj nodded. Bria frowned, not because she lost, but because she hadn't expected him to win anything. The gavel struck, court adjourned. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying autumn leaves down the stone steps. Taj caught up with Kendra as she descended. "I didn't ask you to come," he said quietly. "I know," she replied. "But someone needed to remind you that just because you're fighting to clear your name doesn't mean you're not still responsible for everything that comes with it." Taj's expression was unreadable. "I'm not running anymore." Kendra looked at him for a long moment, then turned to leave. That night, Kendra's apartment. Kendra sat at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope May placed in front of her. "From Silas," May said. Kendra opened it slowly. Inside was a single photograph. It was of Taj, years ago, shaking hands with a man known to have ties to business dealings in questionable overseas ventures. Nothing illegal on paper, but the implication was clear. A note was clipped to the bottom. "How much do you really know about the man who left you?" Kendra's hand trembled slightly as she folded it back up. May watched her carefully. "You okay?" Kendra exhaled slowly. "I don't know. I don't know what's real anymore." May pulled out a chair and sat across from her. "Baby girl, you've been strong for a long time, but being strong don't mean you stop asking questions. It just means you brave enough to face whatever answers come." Taj stood under the open sky, the city glittering around him like a broken crown. He checked his phone. A message from Marcus blinked on the screen. "Bria's team already filed a motion to block discovery. They're scared. That's good." Taj pocketed the phone and closed his eyes. He wasn't afraid of fighting anymore, not for justice, not for his sons, not for the woman he still loved, but he was starting to wonder, could he protect them, without destroying them in the process? Friday evening, Kendra's apartment. The apartment had never felt so quiet. The kitchen clock ticked louder than usual. The scent of baked macaroni and sweet cornbread drifted through the air, warm and familiar. Kendra stood by the stove, arms folded, eyes locked on the casserole in the oven, not seeing it at all. "Ma," Zion said from behind her, "he's gonna come, right?" She turned, startled out of her thoughts. "What?" "Taj, he said he'd be here at 6. It's already 6:02. Kendra glanced at the time. Her heart beat faster, but she masked it behind a calm voice. "He'll be here," she said, though part of her wasn't sure if she wanted that to be true. In the living room, Zaire sat on the couch, arms crossed, pretending not to care. Zane, quiet as always, drew little symbols on the foggy window pane with his finger. Auntie May, watching from the hallway, sighed and said, "You know this was your idea." "I didn't say it was a good one," Kendra muttered. "Just necessary." "Dinner ain't no binding contract," May said. "You said yourself, the boys need to see what kind of man he really is. So let the food cook, and let the truth rise with the heat." Kendra smirked in spite of herself. "That's not how cooking works." "It is when you Southern." 6:09 p.m. Doorbell rings. Tajir stood at the door with a hesitant smile and a box in hand. He wore a navy sweater, dark jeans, and shoes that were scuffed but clean. His usually smooth beard was trimmed a little uneven, like he'd done it himself. "Sorry I'm late," he said as Kendra opened the door. "Traffic." Her expression didn't change. "Right." But she let him in. Inside, the triplets jumped up at once. "Hey," Zion beamed. "You actually came," Zaire said, narrowing his eyes. Zane peeked around the couch and gave a small nod. "Hi." Taj smiled carefully. "Hey fellas, I brought something." He opened the box, a small caramel cake, topped with chopped pecans and a marbled icing swirl. Kendra blinked. "Did you bake that?" Taj shrugged. "A bakery owed me a favor. I supervised." The boys laughed, and just like that, the air warmed. Dinner table, 6:30 p.m. The table was set simply but lovingly. A striped cloth, polished cutlery, and mismatched napkins that still managed to feel homey. Kendra sat at one end, Auntie May at the other, and the triplets flanked Taj on either side. The meal began in awkward silence. Forks clinked, glasses were filled. Then Taj spoke. "So, what's everyone's favorite subject in school?" Zion perked up. "Science." "History," Zane said quietly. "Gym," Zaire mumbled, "because we don't have to write essays." Taj chuckled. "I was terrible at math, couldn't focus to save my life." "You're a billionaire," Zaire said skeptically. "How were you bad at math?" Taj smiled, picking up his cornbread. "I hired people smarter than me, but I knew how to lead, how to plan. That's what really built the company." Zion nodded thoughtfully. "So, you didn't quit school, right?" Kendra stiffened slightly, but Taj answered smoothly. "Graduated with a business degree. Barely. It wasn't easy." Zane tilted his head. "Did you have friends?" Taj hesitated. "Some. Most of the time I was on my own, but I always knew I wanted something more." Conversation eases. As the plates emptied, the questions grew more comfortable, more curious than cautious. Zaire: "Did you ever fight somebody?" Taj: "Only in chess club." Zion: "What's your favorite superhero?" Taj: "Blade, but don't tell Iron Man." Zane: "Do you believe in dreams?" Taj paused. "Every day." Kendra watched it all unfold. Boys leaning in, laughing, sharing pieces of their world. And Taj slowly letting his guard down. Not pretending, not performing, just trying. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a stranger at her table. After dinner, living room, the triplets pulled out a deck of cards and began an intense game of war on the floor. Auntie May headed to her room with a satisfied nod. "I'ma let y'all finish the show without my commentary." Kendra cleared the table, Taj following to help. "You don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted gently. "Let me contribute." They worked side by side in silence, water running over dishes, the smell of sweet cake lingering in the air. Finally, Kendra broke the quiet. "They like you." Taj didn't respond right away. "I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful." Kendra turned to face him. "I still have questions, still have doubts, a lot." "You should," he said. "I'd be more worried if you didn't." There was a beat. "You don't remember our last real conversation, do you?" she asked quietly. Taj looked at her, eyes steady. "I remember leaving your door, with my hand on my stomach like I was holding in something too heavy to speak. You left without a word. I left because of Silas, because of what he said he'd do if I stayed." Kendra's breath caught. "You never told me that." He nodded, "and I regret it every day." They stood in silence. The boys' laughter echoed behind them. Across the street, parked car. Brea James sat in the back seat of a dark SUV, watching through binoculars. She zoomed in on the lit apartment window. The family gathered, laughing. She clenched her jaw. "He's playing house," she muttered. The man beside her, an associate of Silas, tapped his tablet screen. "You want me to leak the photo? The one with him and that foreign investor?" Brea shook her head. "Not yet. We do it now, it'll look like a personal attack. Let the public see him happy. Let them feel something." She smiled coldly. "Then we'll take it all away." Art, final scene, the triplets' bedroom. Later that night, Taj sat on the floor as the boys changed into pajamas. Zion brought over a worn copy of The People Could Fly and handed it to him. "You read it," he said. "Mom always does, but I want to hear it from you." Taj swallowed hard and opened the book. His voice was steady, if a little shaky. As he read about hope, escape, and freedom, he glanced up to see the boys leaning against each other, eyes heavy with sleep. And across the room, Kendra watched from the doorway. She didn't say a word, but something in her gaze had shifted. Not forgiveness, but a beginning. Wednesday morning, Oakview Counseling Center. The quiet hum of the building was almost soothing. But Tajir Monroe couldn't relax. He sat across from Dr. Layla Roan, hands resting on his knees, eyes focused on a point somewhere beyond her bookshelf. The warmth in the room, a flickering candle, soft jazz in the background, didn't reach him today. He'd spent the last week doing what he thought was right, showing up, helping Kendra with dinner, answering the boys' questions, listening. But something still nagged him. He didn't feel fixed. He didn't feel whole. "You've been doing the external work," Layla said, flipping through her notes. "But you're avoiding the deeper question." Taj raised an eyebrow. "Which is? Who are you if you're not their father, or a CEO, or the man who left?" He didn't answer right away. "I don't know," he finally said. "I've always been something to someone, a provider, a disappointment, a name on a building. But now?" He shook his head. "I'm just me, and that doesn't feel like enough." Layla leaned forward, resting her notebook on her lap. "Then it's time we find out who just you really is." Layla's challenge. "I want you to spend one day this week giving back, with no cameras, no press, no expectations, no business suits, no Monroe name, just Taj. Serve somewhere in your community. Be present. Listen." Connect, Taj frowned. "Volunteering?" She nodded. "You're rebuilding. Start at the foundation. See what you find." Taj sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "That's different." "Good," she said. "Different is where growth lives." Thursday morning. Lincoln Elementary. Kendra walked the boys into school with a hand on Zane's back. The boys were buzzing about a class art show and a spelling bee, but she noticed something was off with Zion. He looked pale, slower than usual. "You okay, baby?" she asked. Zion nodded weakly. "Just tired. My tummy hurts a little." She crouched, kissed his forehead. "If it gets worse, tell your teacher. I'll come get you." He nodded again, but his eyes looked a little glassy. Kendra hesitated, then turned and walked out. A few hours later. School nurse's office. Zion lay curled up on the cot, a cold cloth on his forehead. His teacher stood nearby with the school nurse, dialing a number from the emergency card. "She's not answering," the nurse said. "Want me to call the secondary contact?" The teacher nodded. "Do it." The nurse dialed again. 1 ring, 2. "Hello? Mr. Monroe, this is Lincoln Elementary. Zion's not feeling well. His mum's not picking up. You're listed as the emergency backup." Silence. Then, "I'm on my way." 20 minutes later, nurse's office. Taj burst in, out of breath, holding a juice pouch and crackers. "Where is he?" Zion sat up slowly. "Dad?" Taj crouched, brushing the damp curls from his son's forehead. "Yeah, I'm here. You scared me." "I didn't want to call you," Zion mumbled, "but they said, 'Hey, it's okay.'" Taj smiled gently. "You can call me, anytime. That's what I'm here for." Zion nodded, eyes watery. "Can we go home?" "Yeah," Taj said, lifting him carefully. "Let's go home." Later, Kendra's cafe. Kendra returned from a delivery run to see 3 missed calls and a voicemail. She played it. "Hey, it's Taj. I picked Zion up from school. He had a fever and wasn't feeling great. I took him to the pediatric clinic on 141st. Nothing serious, just a virus. I'm with him now. He's resting. Call me back when you can." Kendra's heart jumped. She called immediately. "Hello? Where is he?" "Sleeping. We're at my place. He's okay, Kendra." "You should have told me right away." "I did." Kendra sighed, rubbing her temples. "I'm coming." At Taj's apartment, Upper Harlem. Taj's apartment wasn't what she expected. It wasn't grand, it wasn't glossy, it was small, warm, lived in. Books on the shelves, throw blankets on the couch, framed photos of nothing but Harlem street corners, black and white snapshots, humble but full of heart. Zion was tucked under a soft blanket on the couch, sleeping soundly with a half-finished drawing on his lap. Kendra looked at Taj. "Thank you," she said quietly. He shrugged. "He needed someone. I was available." "You didn't have to stay with him." "Yes, I did." Kendra studied him, his hands gently fixing the edge of the blanket, his shoes kicked off by the door, his phone face down on the table. This wasn't a man trying to impress her, it was a man showing up, and it mattered. Friday morning, Harlem Community Garden. The soil was rich, and the air smelled of rosemary, basil, and tomato vines. Birds chirped overhead as volunteers moved between rows of raised beds. Taj knelt beside an elderly woman who wore a sun hat and gold hoops. "You ain't from around here?" she said with a side eye. "Born 3 blocks over," Taj said. "But it's been a minute." She smirked. "Well, you're doing all right." He smiled. "Trying." She handed him a trowel. "Start with those weeds, then we'll talk about the real work." And he did. For hours he dug. He listened to stories. He shared little truths. He laughed with kids who reminded him of his own. He met a teenager with a shy smile and a gift for poetry, and he promised to visit his open mic night. When the sun dipped low and the final rake was set aside, Taj sat under a tree, sweat on his brow, earth under his nails, and a peace in his chest he hadn't felt in years. That night, Kendra's apartment. The boys were watching a movie when Taj dropped off Zion's medication. Kendra walked him to the door. "How was your day?" she asked. He smiled, tired but proud. Found myself pulling weeds and giving pep talks. Layla's idea? Yeah, it worked. Kendra nodded, then hesitated. You were good with Zion. Taj looked down. He needed me. I just want to keep showing them they can count on me. She studied him, then said softly, They're starting to believe it. He looked at her. And you? She didn't answer, but she didn't close the door either. Silas Cole stood by his window, staring at the city below. Bria walked in, arms crossed. He's winning, she said. The boys, Kendra, even the press is softening. Silas sipped his drink. Then it's time. For what? He turned slowly. To remind everyone what Tajir Monroe used to be, Kendra sat down hard on the edge of the bed, the letter trembling in her hands. All these years, she had thought he abandoned them because of fear, because of selfishness, because he didn't want the responsibility. But this letter, it was something else entirely. It was fear, yes, but it was also love, and that realization stung more than she expected. Flashback. 7 years ago, the night Kendra went into labor early, she sat in her apartment, holding her phone and that same unopened envelope. She was too hurt to read it then, too angry to care what he had to say. She'd stuffed it away and moved forward, telling herself there was nothing in that envelope but cowardice. But now everything felt different. Later, Community Park Taj sat on the bleachers while the boys raced through the grass, kicking a worn soccer ball and laughing with the abandon only kids had. Zion's fever had broken, and the color had returned to his face. Zaire was shouting rules no one followed. Zane hummed quietly to himself, stopping every so often to pick flowers and hand them to whoever would take them. Taj watched them with quiet awe. He was learning every day, their moods, their strengths, their fears. Zion loved facts and maps. Zaire had a temper, but always looked out for others. Zane was gentle, observant, a storm beneath a still surface, and they were beginning to trust him. Dad, Zion called. Taj looked up. Zion smiled. I said you're goalie now. That word, Dad, it hit like a chord struck deep in his chest. It wasn't forced, it wasn't awkward, it was natural, spoken freely, and Taj couldn't remember the last time a single word meant so much. Meanwhile, Silas Cole's office. Leak it, Silas said, tossing a folder onto the desk. Bria raised a brow. You sure? Time for the world to remember who Tajir Monroe used to be. Inside the folder, photos from Taj's early business years, one of them showing him shaking hands with a man who had later been caught up in a financial scandal. There had never been charges against Taj, but the implication alone could stir public suspicion. A second photo was even more damaging. An old club party, years ago, with Taj at the center of a crowd, a bottle raised high. It was pre-fatherhood, pre-Kendra. But out of context, it looked like recklessness. Bria smirked. Press release? Silas nodded. And tell them to add a quote from a concerned former associate. Make it look like someone from inside is worried he's slipping again. Bria grabbed her phone. Done. Sunday morning. Headlines. Exclusive. Tajir Monroe's reckless past exposed. Old ties, wild nights, and a return to familiar patterns? Father or fraud? Critics question. Whether Monroe's redemption is real or a PR move. Sources say the former mogul has been trying to reinsert himself into his children's lives, but is he safe for them? The articles exploded across morning feeds. Gossip blogs ran wild. Social media turned sharp and speculative. And at the center of it, the photo, Taj smiling at a now-convicted investor, sat like a scarlet letter. Back at the cafe. Kendra walked into Westside Cafe with her phone buzzing non-stop. Auntie May looked up from behind the counter. You seen it? She asked. Kendra nodded, Grim. May handed her a printed copy of the article. Kendra read in silence. She didn't want to believe any of it, and thanks to the letter, she didn't. But the problem wasn't her. The problem was the court of public opinion. The court that didn't need facts, just the right photo and a headline to judge. Her phone buzzed again. A message from a fellow parent at the boys' school. "Are your kids okay being around him?" Another buzz. A reporter. Comment on Tajir Monroe's parenting capacity. And then, Principal Harris. "We need to talk about the family day appearance. There's been concern." Kendra set the phone down, her breath short. She needed to see Taj. Later, that day, Taj's apartment. She found him sitting on the couch, reading Zane's drawing journal with a soft smile on his face. "Do you want to tell me about it?" she said coldly. "Or should I start reading tweets out loud?" Taj looked up, caught off guard. "I just saw it," he said. "I didn't know they had those pictures." "You were in business with a man under federal investigation?" 10 years ago, I never knew he was dirty. When it came out, I severed ties immediately." "And the club photos?" "Taken before I even met you. I was young, stupid. Yes, but not dangerous." Kendra folded her arms. "People think you're unstable, that you're pretending to change." He stood, meeting her gaze. "I'm not pretending. I am changing, slowly, painfully, every day." She pulled the folded letter from her coat and held it out. "You should have let me read this back then." Taj froze. "I tried," he whispered. "I left it in your mailbox the night I left. I found it yesterday." They stood in silence, two storms learning to speak in calm. Then Kendra stepped closer. "I believe you, Taj, but this storm's not stopping, and if you want to be their father, you have to weather it with me, not behind me, beside me." He nodded, eyes glinting. "I'm not going anywhere." Final scene, the triplets' room. That night, Zion, Zaire, and Zane lay in bed as thunder rolled outside. Zane whispered, "You think Dad's gonna disappear again?" Zaire said, "No, not this time." Zion rolled over. "You know what I said to him today?" "What?" Zaire asked. "I said, I was glad he came back." No one replied, but none of them turned away either. The rain tapped softly on the window, and for the first time since Tajir Monroe re-entered their lives, the storm felt survivable. Monday afternoon, West Side Cafe. The lunch rush had passed, and the soft hum of lo-fi jazz filled the room. Sunlight poured in through the front windows, catching on glass jars of lemon cookies and fresh scones. Kendra stood behind the counter, wiping down the espresso machine. Her mind wasn't on the cafe today. It was on the headlines, the pressure from the school, the endless stream of messages, and the folded letter that never left her purse. She glanced up when she heard the bell. Taj walked in, dressed in a plain white tee and dark jeans. No suit, no entourage. Just him. Kendra raised a brow. "You walking in here like you're not the trending topic of the week?" He gave a tight smile. "I've been worse." She gestured to the back corner. "Come on, let's talk where the muffins can't hear." They sat at the corner table, tucked away from the street view. Kendra leaned forward, voice low. "We need to talk about Silas, about what he did back then, and what he's still doing now." Taj nodded. "I've already started tracing his shell companies. 3 of them are using Monroe Dynamics patents without permission. That's not just theft. That's set up for a federal case." Kendra blinked. "You think he's baiting you?" "I know he is," Taj said. "He wants me angry, out of control. He wants the headlines to turn into proof." Kendra frowned. "And Bria?" "Attached to his side, feeding off the same fire. But she's not the planner. Silas is, and he's been playing this long game since before the boys were born." Kendra folded her arms. "Then we start playing back. Smart, quiet, and fast. That night, Taj's apartment. The triplets sat cross-legged on the living room rug, playing a trivia game with Taj. Cards were scattered everywhere, and a bowl of popcorn had long since been spilled and refilled. Zion read aloud. "Who was the first black woman in space?" Zaire shouted. "Mae Jemison." Zion checked the card. "Correct." Zane raised his hand shyly. "Can I ask one?" Taj nodded. "Of course." Zane didn't reach for a card. He looked directly at Taj. "Why did you leave Mommy when she was pregnant?" The room went still. Zion and Zaire turned. Taj set the card down slowly. "That's a fair question." He leaned forward, voice steady but gentle. "I left because I thought it was the only way to keep your mom safe. Someone I trusted betrayed me, and suddenly, people I'd never seen before were showing up, asking questions, threatening things. I was scared, and I was wrong." Zaire frowned. "Why didn't you call?" "I tried, but the phone went dead. The accounts were frozen, and the person I thought would help me, Silas, he shut everything down." The triplets exchanged glances. Zion said, "So, he's the reason?" "One of them," Taj said. "But I made the mistake of leaving without fighting. I didn't believe I had a choice. I do now." Zane nodded slowly, then handed Taj a crumpled drawing. It was a new one, all 5 of them, standing in front of the cafe, with Auntie May in the window and a speech bubble from Zaire that said, "We got your back." Taj smiled. "You drew this?" Zane nodded. "I wanted you to have it." Tuesday, Auntie May's house. Auntie May shuffled through her closet looking for an old album when Kendra walked in. "You got a minute?" Kendra asked. May glanced over her shoulder. "You mean a real minute or a long one?" Kendra cracked a smile. "Long one." They sat at the kitchen table. Kendra placed the letter on the table. "I read it, finally. What he left me." May looked at the letter without picking it up. "And?" "It wasn't what I thought. He was trying to protect us. And the more I look back, there were signs. Things I ignored because I didn't want excuses." May let out a breath. "There's something I never told you. I wasn't sure you'd ever be ready to hear it." Kendra's stomach dropped. "May, what?" 2 weeks after Taj left, a man came by. Said he was a private investigator, had questions about Taj's business, but he didn't ask about money. He asked about you, about your schedule, the hospital, the nursery. Kendra's eyes widened. "You never told me that." May shrugged. "Didn't want to scare you. Figured maybe it was a former associate just snooping." Kendra whispered, "But it wasn't, was it?" May shook her head. "Number, I think Silas was making sure Taj didn't come back, and I think he used you, and the babies, as leverage." Later, Monroe Dynamics Archives, private storage, Taj and Marcus Hill, his lawyer, entered a locked storage room filled with sealed boxes. One of them was labeled Confidential-R&D Department. Inside, a tablet containing blueprints that didn't match any current patents. They were innovations Taj never signed off on, but his name was still listed in the code. Marcus exhaled. "They used your identity. Post-exit. This is patent fraud, plain and simple." Taj gritted his teeth. "We bring this to the board?" "We bring this to the press," Marcus said. "If we go legal, it gets buried. But if the public sees the proof first, Silas won't be able to spin it." Taj looked at the screen. Diagrams of energy-efficient battery prototypes he'd sketched in the early days. They'd been stolen, twisted, marketed without him, and now it was time to take them back. Meanwhile, Silas's condo. Silas poured a drink as Bria paced the room. "We've poked the bear," she said. "You sure we're not going too far?" Silas sipped. No such thing as too far, especially not when he left the gate open. "He's getting stronger," Bria said. Smarter. Even the kids are defending him now. Which means it's time to remind them of the stakes. Bria paused. You're not thinking of... Silas turned. He has 3 sons. What happens if one gets hurt on his watch? Bria froze. Don't you dare cross that line, Silas. His eyes narrowed. You wanted to win. This is what it takes. She didn't respond, but something in her face shifted. A flash of guilt, a crack, and maybe the beginning of doubt. Zion pinned a sheet to the Family Day bulletin board. It was a drawing of their family tree. At the top, 2 names were finally written side by side. Kendra West plus Tajir Monroe. Below it, Zion, Zaire, Zane. And at the very bottom, in messy crayon, our family is growing again, stronger every day. Thursday morning, Lincoln Elementary. The hallway buzzed with excitement. Handmade posters of family trees lined the walls. Construction paper hearts, glittered crowns, and stick figure drawings of moms, dads, aunts, and grandparents decorated every corner. It was Family Day, and for the first time, the Monroe triplets would have both parents present. Zion, Zaire, and Zane stood proudly beside their presentation board. At the top, in bold crayon letters, Our family is stronger together. The board featured photos of Kendra baking with them, Auntie May giving her classic scowl, and, most recent of all, Taj crouched beside them, helping Zane with a model volcano. Kendra stood nearby, dressed in soft pastels and jeans, her nervous smile masked by proud eyes. Taj, in a charcoal sweater and simple slacks, stood beside her. They weren't holding hands, but the distance between them had grown noticeably shorter. Parents and teachers walked through the halls, admiring projects and snapping photos, but not everyone smiled. Across the hall, Principal Harris, tall and silver-haired with an ever-present clipboard, approached with a hesitant look. Ms. West, she began. Kendra turned. Yes? I need a quick word about a situation that's just come up. Taj's posture shifted. He could feel the weight behind that tone. Principal Harris gestured to her phone. There's been a video circulating this morning. Multiple parents have emailed. It's from several years ago. Shows Mr. Monroe at a party, surrounded by alcohol, shouting, celebrating, dancing. Taj inhaled through his nose. From 10 years ago, he said calmly, before I ever met Kendra, before the boys were born. Context understood, Harris said, clearly uncomfortable. But we've received complaints. Some parents are concerned. Kendra narrowed her eyes. Concerned about what, exactly? That this display might glorify someone they see as unstable. Taj stepped forward. Are you telling me I'm being asked to leave? No, nothing like that, Harris said, quickly. We're just navigating perceptions. Kendra's voice sharpened. Let me be clear. This man may not have had a perfect past, but he has been here, every step of the way. Since reuniting with his children, he's shown up, he's earned their trust, and he's earned mine. I will not let a video of a man celebrating in his 20s erase the man he is today. Zion tugged on her sleeve. Is something wrong? Kendra knelt, smoothing his shirt. Not at all, baby. We're just making sure everyone remembers how amazing your family project is. Principal Harris, seeing the quiet courage in the child's eyes, softened. You're right, she said quietly. Carry on. Meanwhile, school parking lot. Across the street, Silas Cole sat in a sleek black car, watching the school entrance through tinted windows. His phone buzzed. Bria James. She sounded tense. You said the video would make him spiral. Silas smiled. Give it time. Time for what? She snapped. Because right now the only person spiraling is me. My inbox is full of journalists wanting to confirm I was involved in the leak. Silas didn't blink. You were careful. No one can trace it back. I'm not talking about evidence, she hissed. I'm talking about reputation. You said we'd bury him, not pull ourselves into the dirt too. He leaned back, tone measured. You've always had a choice, Bria. You want out? Step away. Bria hesitated. The silence stretched. Then, just don't cross lines we can't uncross. Click. Silas lowered the phone and smirked. Lines, he muttered. Funny word for someone who helped to draw them. Inside. The classroom. Later that morning, the triplets stood proudly as Principal Harris walked the visiting families through the projects. When it came time for their presentation, Zion stepped forward. My name is Zion, and this is my family. We're strong because we've been through hard stuff, but we love each other. Zaire grinned. We used to not know our dad, now we do. Zane held up a small painting. It showed a tree, thick roots, wide branches, and 5 people standing beneath it. I made this, he said softly, because families don't have to be perfect, they just have to try. There was a quiet hush in the room. Several parents, the same ones who'd emailed Principal Harris, nodded slowly. And Taj just stood there, arms crossed, jaw tight, fighting the kind of tears no article could ever bring out. After the presentation, Hallway Kendra and Taj stepped into the hallway. You didn't have to stand so still, she teased lightly. I thought you were trying to become furniture. He chuckled. I didn't want to mess up the moment. She studied him. You handled the video better than I expected. I'm not that man anymore, he said, but I'm also not ashamed of who I was. Everything I did, right or wrong, led me here. She nodded slowly. The kid stood taller today. That means something. He looked at her, quiet. You stood up for me too. Kendra offered a soft smile. We're not always on the same side, but today, you were right. The past doesn't define us. The present does. Meanwhile, back at the cafe. Auntie May stood near the register, flipping through receipts, when a young woman entered. Maybe mid-20s, hair twisted into neat coils, clipboard in hand. Can I help you? May asked. Meanwhile, back at the cafe. Auntie May stood near the register, flipping through receipts, when a young woman entered. Maybe mid-20s, hair twisted into neat coils, clipboard in hand. Can I help you? May asked. I'm with the Beacon Voice, a community news blog, the woman said. We're doing a piece on the Family Day video fallout. Can I ask you a few questions? May tilted her head. You mean the foolishness about Tajir Monroe's party boy past? The woman nodded cautiously. May walked around the counter, arms crossed. Let me tell you something, baby girl. People love to dig up bones and forget they used to dance, too. That man raised 3 boys in the last 3 months, better than some folks do in years. The reporter blinked. So, you're defending him? I'm saying watch him, not watch the tape. That's the difference between memory and movement. She turned back toward the kitchen. You want a story? That's your headline. Final scene, Kendra's apartment. Later that evening, Kendra tucked the boys into bed. The air was filled with the scent of lavender lotion and freshly washed pajamas. Zion whispered, Did we do good today? Kendra kissed his forehead. You did better than good. You made your whole family proud. Zaire mumbled, Even with the video? Especially with the video, she said. You told your truth. That's more powerful than any old footage. Zane turned toward the wall, then paused. Can Dad read tomorrow night? Kendra blinked. Yeah, she said softly. I think he'd like that. Monday, New York Family Court. The courthouse stood like a stone monument against the sky, tall, gray, and unyielding. The steps leading to its front doors seemed longer today, heavier beneath the feet of Kendra, Taj, and Marcus Hill, Taj's attorney. Taj's jaw was tight. He wore a muted grey suit, not his usual bold corporate armor. Today wasn't about power. It was about proving he was stable, present, and capable of being a father. Behind them, a photographer snapped a picture. The headline would come hours later. Tajir Monroe faces custody challenge. Ex-billionaire's parental rights under review. Inside the courtroom, 9:15 a.m. The courtroom was small but packed. One row was filled with concerned parents from the Triplets school. Another held reporters scribbling into notepads. The judge, Honorable Delia Warner, was known for being sharp, fair, and utterly immune to theatrics. Silas Cole sat at the petitioner's table with his lawyer, a tall, polished man with glasses and a clipboard that seemed to have its own law degree. Silas looked smug, leaning back like he already owned the room. Taj sat straight, flanked by Marcus on one side and Kendra on the other. The boys weren't present. Court had ruled they didn't need to be involved unless necessary. Kendra leaned toward Taj and whispered, "Whatever happens, remember, they know who you really are." He nodded silently. Judge Warner entered. "All rise." Everyone stood. She adjusted her glasses, scanning the docket before speaking. Case number 247A, petition for temporary guardianship of Zion Zaire and Zane Monroe, brought forth by Mr. Silas Cole. Opening arguments begin now. Silas's attorney stood, buttoned his coat. "Your Honor, my client has petitioned for guardianship due to serious concerns over the well-being of 3 minor children, currently under the influence of a man with a well-documented history of instability, reckless behavior, and public controversy. Recent media leaks suggest an environment unsuitable for young children, behavior patterns that may lead to emotional harm if not corrected. Mr. Cole, being the boy's godfather, has a long-standing relationship with the family and is offering a stable alternative during this time of concern." Murmurs spread across the courtroom. Taj's fingers tightened around the armrest. Kendra's brow furrowed. Marcus rose calmly. "Your Honor, my client, the biological father of these children, has done everything in his power since returning to ensure the safety, growth, and emotional stability of his sons. He is not perfect, but he is present, and in matters of family, presence is more valuable than perfection." The judge nodded. "Thank you. I'll now hear witness testimony." First witness, Kendra West. She stood, walked to the stand, and took the oath. Once seated, Silas's lawyer stepped forward. "Ms. West, how long have you known Mr. Cole?" Kendra's voice was steady. "About 10 years. And would you say he's been supportive in raising your sons?" She hesitated. "He visited a few birthdays, sent gifts. But no, he's never helped raise them." "So you disagree with the statement that he's a consistent presence?" "I strongly disagree." The lawyer smirked. "And what about Mr. Monroe? After disappearing for 7 years, how can you now be confident in his ability to remain consistent?" Kendra glanced at Taj. "Because I've watched him show up every day for the last few months, without excuse, without fail, and because when our son was sick, he was the one who picked him up, sat by his side and held his hand." She turned back to the lawyer. "Because I've seen the look in my boys' eyes when they see their father. And that kind of connection, you can't fake that." The room fell quiet. The judge made a note. Next witness, Tajir Monroe. Taj stepped to the stand. Marcus approached with care. "Mr. Monroe, can you describe the relationship you have with your sons?" Taj's voice was firm, if slightly hoarse. "I'm learning them, and they're learning me. We didn't grow together, but we're growing now. They call me Dad. They ask me questions I don't always have answers to, and I show up with honesty. That's the promise I've made to them, that I'll never vanish again." Marcus nodded. "And what about your past?" Do you believe it makes you unfit? No, Taj said simply. I think it makes me more aware of what not to be. I'm not here to defend every mistake. I'm here to build better days. The judge looked up. Have you completed court-recommended therapy? Yes, ma'am. Ongoing. Weekly. Cross-examination. Silas's lawyer. Mr. Monroe, is it true that you were involved in multiple high-level business disputes, some of which ended with financial losses and reputational damage? Yes. Is it also true that you attended therapy due to emotional fatigue and stress-related decisions that nearly endangered your own life? Taj didn't flinch. Also true. So what reassurance do you offer this court that you won't relapse into those patterns? Taj looked straight at the judge. I've already faced the worst version of myself. I'm not afraid of falling anymore because I've already climbed out, and I'm not climbing alone. Unexpected interruption. Zaire. Suddenly, the courtroom doors opened, and Zaire burst in, followed closely by Auntie May. Zaire! Kendra stood. The judge frowned. Young man! I need to talk, Zaire said, breathless. Please. Warner paused, then nodded. Approach. Zaire walked to the front. I know kids don't get to talk in these things, he said, but you're talking about me and my brothers like we're furniture. The judge blinked. You have something to say? Zaire nodded hard. Yes, ma'am. Taj, my dad, is the one who helped me with my math when I almost failed. He's the one who talks me down when I'm mad. I didn't like him at first, but I trust him now. He looked directly at Silas. I don't know what he wants, but it's not about us. He don't know us. Then back at the judge. We got a dad, a real one. Don't take him away. A hush fell over the courtroom. Even Silas looked rattled. Judge Warner cleared her throat gently. Thank you, Zaire. You've been heard. Auntie May walked him back to the gallery, eyes proud, voice whispering, That's my baby. Final ruling. Temporary verdict. The judge returned after a brief recess. This is a complex case, she began, but from the evidence provided, I see no grounds to remove the father from the lives of these children. Guardianship request is denied. Gasps. Relief. Tension broke like glass. Warner continued. However, this court recommends continued family counseling and supervised evaluations over the next 60 days to confirm long-term consistency. She struck the gavel. Court adjourned. Outside. Courthouse steps cameras flashed. Reporters rushed, but Taj ignored them. He knelt in front of Zaire. You didn't have to do that. I know, Zaire said, smirking. I wanted to. Kendra reached down and squeezed Taj's shoulder. He looked up, and for the first time since returning, he felt something he hadn't dared believe was possible. He belonged. Tuesday, Oakview Family Therapy Center. The room was sunlit and soft, filled with cushions, beanbags, a low table stacked with crayons and paper, and a wall of framed quotes like, Healing doesn't mean forgetting. Families are built one truth at a time. Dr. Layla Roan sat in a circle with her legs crossed and a notepad resting in her lap. Around her sat Kendra, Taj, Zion, Zaire, Zane, and Auntie May, who was very vocal about being too old for therapy, but not too old to listen. This was their first official family session, mandated by the court. It wasn't optional, but the energy in the room made it clear it might be the most important one they'd ever have. Layla smiled gently. We're here to talk, not to judge. Every voice in this room matters. So let's start simple. Everyone gets to say one word about how they're feeling right now. She pointed to Zane. The quietest triplet looked up. Nervous? Zion said. Hopeful. Zaire rolled his eyes. Hungry. The adults chuckled. Kendra smirked. Guarded. Taj said, determined. Auntie May waved her hand. Skeptical baby, but willing. Layla nodded. Good. Now let's go deeper. She looked at Zayn. You were nervous. Can you tell me why? Zayn hesitated, then reached for a sheet of paper and started drawing. Slowly, he held it up. It showed 5 stick figures, Kendra, the triplets, and Taj. But the Taj figure was drawn with dotted lines. I'm scared he'll fade again, Zayn whispered. The room went still. Taj blinked hard. You think I'm still temporary? Zayn nodded, eyes shiny. People who leave usually don't stay gone just once. Kendra looked down. Her heart broke a little hearing it, not because she blamed Zayn, but because she'd had the same fear for years. Taj leaned forward. Can I say something? Layla nodded. Taj turned to Zayn. I was a ghost for too long. You're right to be unsure, but I promise I'm here, every morning, every bedtime. I'm not disappearing anymore. I don't expect you to believe it yet. I just hope you give me time to show you. Zayn didn't respond, but he slid the drawing closer to Taj, quietly coloring in the dotted lines with soft pencil strokes. Layla turned to Zaire. You said you were hungry. Want to talk about what's really behind that? Zaire crossed his arms. I don't like being here. Because? Because people keep acting like Taj is the only one who messed up. Kendra's head snapped up. What do you mean? Zaire looked at her, a little too sharp for a boy his age. You never told us about him, ever. You just said he was gone and we didn't need him. But maybe we did. Kendra's breath caught. Zaire continued, quieter now. You protected us, but you also shut us out, and now I'm just mad at everybody. The silence that followed was painful. Layla watched Kendra carefully. It's okay to admit when we got things wrong, Layla said softly. Kendra's voice was low, raw. I didn't know how to explain someone breaking my heart while I was pregnant. I didn't want y'all to grow up feeling abandoned, so I buried the pain. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell the whole truth. Zaire leaned into Auntie May's shoulder. I wanted to ask questions. I just didn't know if I was allowed. You're allowed, Kendra whispered. You always were. Zion broke the tension next. Can I ask something? Layla smiled. Of course. He looked between his parents. Do you still love each other? Even Layla paused. Kendra's mouth opened, then closed. Taj looked at the floor. Auntie May muttered, Whew, now that's the $1,000,000 question. Zion blinked. Because if you don't, that's okay. But if you do, I just want to know. It helps my brain understand what's happening. Kendra rubbed her hands together. Love is complicated, Taj added. It doesn't go away just because people make mistakes. Zion waited, and finally, Kendra looked at Taj. I never stopped caring, she said, even when I wanted to, even when I hated how much I missed what we had. Taj's voice was quiet. I still love you, Kendra. I don't expect anything. I just need you to know that part never changed. Tears brimmed in Kendra's eyes. She looked away. Layla gently redirected. Feelings are real, and they can live alongside healing. What matters is how we act on them. The kids sat wide-eyed, absorbing it all. Break time. Therapy Center lounge. While the boys ate cookies in the kids' area, Kendra leaned against the wall, sipping tea. Taj stood beside her. They ask the questions we're afraid to, she said. Zion's got your fire, Taj replied, and Zaire's got your bluntness. They both chuckled, then fell into silence. You meant it? Kendra asked quietly. Every word. I don't know if I can go back to who we were. I don't want to, Taj said. I want to build something new. She looked up at him, uncertain, but no longer cold. We'll see. He nodded. That was enough for now. Meanwhile, Silas's condo. Silas sat by the window, drinking tea, not coffee. Even his indulgence was precise. His assistant entered, hesitant. The custody petition failed, and the therapy reports are favorable. Silas didn't react. The assistant cleared his throat. Also, the school principal issued a public letter praising Taj's presence during Family Day. Local coverage spun it positive. Still no reaction, but Silas finally spoke. Then it's time we stop looking at Taj. Sir? Silas turned, calm but cold. Let's see what happens when we target someone they trust. He lifted a manila folder from the desk, flipping it open to a page labeled Subject, May Whitaker, Financial History and Estate Records. Auntie May tucked a blanket over Zane, humming quietly. The boys had fallen asleep fast after the session. Heavy conversations tend to drain even young hearts. She turned out the light and walked into the kitchen. Kendra was waiting. You okay? She asked. May nodded. They said a lot today, stuff you can't always hear unless you slow down. Kendra looked at her aunt. We might need you more than ever. May raised a brow. You always had me, but what's coming? Kendra handed her a white envelope that had been slid under their door. Inside was a photo of May standing outside the cafe, and a typed note. Everyone has a weakness, even you. SC. May stared at it, then set it down slowly. Looks like Silas just picked the wrong woman to rattle. Thursday morning, Harlem Community Legal Center. The fluorescent lights buzzed quietly as Taj, flanked by Marcus Hill and two data analysts, stood in front of a long conference table. On the wall behind them, a projection screen displayed slides filled with diagrams, email screenshots, time-stamped financial transactions, and source code IDs. At the center of it all, proof. This, Marcus said, pointing with a laser pen, is a patented clean energy prototype, designed and approved under Tajir Munro's leadership. What you see next is a screenshot of the same design, marketed 6 months after Taj's forced exit, filed under a shell company tied to Silas Cole's private holding. The room went still. Across the table, lawyers representing Munro Dynamics sat in silence. Among them, 2 junior board members shifted nervously. The name Tajir Munro was no longer a stain. It was becoming a badge of integrity. And if that's not enough, Marcus continued, we have Silas Cole's former assistant, willing to testify that these files were accessed, altered, and deliberately mislabeled to cut Mr. Munro out. A low whistle came from one of the analysts. That's textbook intellectual theft. Taj said nothing. He didn't need to. The truth was loud enough. Meanwhile, Westside Cafe Kendra poured fresh lavender tea into Auntie May's mug, both of them sitting in the back office with the note from Silas laid between them like a threat that refused to be ignored. May shook her head. He's getting bold. Kendra folded her arms. He's scared, that's all it is. Taj has him cornered, and he's trying to lash out. May narrowed her eyes. He picked the wrong one. I've seen worse than Silas Cole and lived to cook Sunday dinner. Kendra smiled. I know, but we're still reporting this. I already filed with the police, May said. Gave them the photo and the note. If he steps near me, he's going to wish he'd stuck to paperwork. Kendra exhaled. We're almost through this. Almost, May said, lifting her mug. But not yet. Friday afternoon, Munro Dynamics headquarters, now rebranded as Solentech. A press conference had been scheduled. Word had spread that a major announcement was coming. Speculation ran wild across financial blogs and business circles, but no one expected to see Tajir Munro step up to the podium again. Not in person, not this calm, not with receipts. He stood before the cameras, media crews packed tight, and held up a single folder. This, he said clearly, is a record of every proprietary concept stolen from me after I was forced out of the company I built. Click, flash, buzz. I will not be silenced, and I will not allow my children to grow up in a world where truth gets buried because it makes people uncomfortable. A few reporters gasped as Marcus passed out copies of the files. Taj continued. As of this morning, a federal injunction has been approved. Silas Cole is being investigated for corporate theft, tax misrepresentation, and misappropriation of federal clean energy grants. A new wave of flashes. And for the record, Taj added, his voice deepening, this is not revenge. This is restoration. He stepped away from the mic. The crowd erupted. That evening, Monroe family home, Kendra's apartment. The boys were buzzing with excitement, gathered around the television as the replay of Taj's press conference aired. Zion grinned from ear to ear. He looked like a superhero, he said. Like Iron Man without the metal, Zaire agreed. Zane smiled softly. He said our name. On TV, Kendra stood in the doorway, watching them. Her heart swelled with pride, but also something deeper, something unspoken. The man who had walked away years ago had returned not with excuses, but actions. And now, he was giving them back their name, clean, whole, and proud. Later, that night, rooftop of the Langston Bridge. The sky was clear, painted in fading orange and soft blue. The wind rustled gently as Taj walked to the center of the bridge, this time not alone. Kendra walked beside him, her curls swept back by the breeze, her coat fluttering as she stepped into the same space where so much had once ended. And now, something new was about to begin. The triplets trailed behind, carrying a folded blanket and a small lantern. Zion set it down and clicked it on, the light casting a soft glow over the bridge's steel rails. Taj turned to them. Boys, give me just a minute with your mom. They obeyed without complaint, settling a few feet away and playing quietly with the lantern glow. Kendra looked at Taj. This the part where you tell me you're moving to Bali? He laughed. Tempting, but no. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a velvet box. Not flashy, not oversized. Just right. Kendra blinked. Taj! I know it's not perfect. I know we've been through storms I'd never wish on anyone, but we made it. And not just you and me, them too. He stepped closer. You don't owe me another chance, Kendra, but I'm asking anyway. He opened the box. Inside, a slim, silver ring inlaid with a thin band of onyx, her favorite stone. Not just to marry me, but to build with me, to be my partner, to raise our sons with me, fully, together. Tears filled her eyes. You sure? He smiled. Never been sure of anything. From behind them, Zaire whispered, Say yes so we can go eat. Everyone laughed. Kendra nodded slowly. Yes. It wasn't loud, it wasn't overdramatic, but it was everything. Taj slipped the ring onto her finger as the triplets rushed over to wrap around both of them in one big, chaotic, perfect family hug. In this city, names can be lost, power can be stolen, and the past can haunt you like a shadow. But when love is real and effort is consistent, even the darkest chapters can end in light. Tonight, Tajir Monroe didn't just reclaim a legacy, he reclaimed a life. 1 year later, upstate New York, autumn afternoon, the sun filtered through golden leaves as the Monroe family estate stood tall and elegant in the quiet countryside. It wasn't opulent, not in the old, gaudy billionaire way. This was something else, a large wraparound porch, painted white columns, laughter drifting on the breeze. The scent of roasted sweet potatoes and spiced apple cider floated from the open kitchen windows. The front yard was alive with family, not guests, not board members, but real people, loved ones, community, and at the center of it all, a wedding. Inside the house, bridal room, Kendra stood in front of the mirror in a cream lace gown that hugged her curves gracefully before flowing down into soft, fluttering layers. Her hair was coiled into a low chignon, accented with golden pins shaped like small leaves. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what today meant. Auntie May stood behind her, adjusting the veil. "You look like your mama did on her wedding day," May said softly, a rare hush in her voice. Kendra smiled through the lump in her throat. "She'd like this, wouldn't she?" "She'd love this," May whispered, "especially because this time you chose love on your terms." Kendra turned and hugged her tightly. "I almost didn't get here." "But you did," May said, "and so did he." Outside. The grove rows of white chairs had been set under a canopy of trees, their leaves a riot of amber, crimson, and gold. Zion, Zaire, and Zane stood at the front in mini tuxedos, each one proudly holding a part of the ceremony. Zaire, the rings, with strict instructions not to drop them. Zion, a bouquet of sunflowers to hand off. Zane, the handwritten vows in a leather-bound journal. The crowd stood as soft piano music began, and Tajir Monroe turned to look. He stood tall, in a fitted navy suit with a golden pocket square. His hands weren't shaking anymore. His gaze held steady. Kendra emerged between the trees, escorted by May, who gave her a knowing look before letting go halfway down the aisle. The rest of the walk was hers alone, just the way she wanted it. As she reached him, Taj exhaled. "You're even more than I remembered." Kendra smiled. "You're exactly who I hoped you'd become." The ceremony, no pastor, no religious officiant, just Dr. Layla Rowan, their family counselor turned close friend, standing under an archway of flowers. She began, "When Kendra and Taj first sat in my office, they weren't a couple. They were co-parents trying to untangle years of pain. What you see here today isn't just the product of love. It's the result of work, of choosing each other, again and again." Layla turned to Taj. "Your vows." Taj took the book from Zane. He read, voice steady but soft. "I once stood on a bridge and thought I had nothing left. I thought failure defined me. But that night your sons, our sons, saved me. And then you saved me again, by letting me try. I promise you, I will never let the past write our future again. I vow to lead with honesty, protect this love fiercely, and build a home our boys will never have to question." Kendra took her vows next, hand trembling only slightly. "I carried 3 boys on my own, and for a long time I thought strength meant doing it alone. But then you came back, not to rescue me, but to meet me, stand beside me. I promise to walk with you in truth, to challenge you with grace, and to love you not for the man you were, but for the man you chose to become." The boys wiped their eyes quietly. Even Auntie May sniffled. Layla looked to the crowd. "By the love they've rebuilt, the truth they've lived, and the promises they've made, I now pronounce them partners in every sense." Kendra and Taj leaned in, and their kiss wasn't flashy or overly long. It was simple, real. Long tables filled the lawn, candles flickering in glass jars, music flowing as kids danced barefoot in the grass. Platters of southern food were passed around. Collard greens, mac and cheese, baked salmon, cornbread, peach cobbler. People laughed, hugged, told stories. Taj stood by the dessert table, watching his sons chase bubbles with cousins and classmates. Kendra joined him, holding 2 glasses of sparkling cider. He took one. "You sure you're ready for this next chapter?" Kendra looked out over the scene. "More than ready." Behind them, a journalist snapped a photo. But this time, it wouldn't be used for scandal. It would headline a local blog that read, "From Pain to Promise, inside the Monroe family's new beginning. Meanwhile, Silas Cole's penthouse. Silas sat in silence, alone. The lawsuit against him had been made public. The federal investigation froze all his company's accounts. Bria James had issued a formal statement cutting ties and moved her offices across the city. He still wore the suit, still drank his espresso. But this time, no one was watching. He picked up his phone and saw the photo from the wedding going viral. Taj, smiling. Kendra, radiant. The triplets in mid-laughter. He stared for a long time, then deleted the message without reading the caption. For once, even Silas knew when he'd lost. Later that night, the family returned to the Langston Bridge, the place where everything had begun and almost ended. This time, it was lit with hanging lights. The triplets sat on a bench, sipping hot cocoa from thermoses. Taj and Kendra stood near the rail, side by side. "I used to hate this bridge," he said. "I did too," she whispered. "It scared me." "But now?" he asked. Kendra smiled, linking her fingers with his. "Now it's sacred, not because of what almost happened, but because of what did." He nodded slowly. "A new beginning." She looked at the boys. "Our beginning, not the end." And together, beneath the glow of the lanterns and the quiet city skyline beyond, the Monroe family stood strong, not perfect, but whole, together. Here comes the end of Season 1. If you're interested in Season 2, comment Mr. Hope, Season 2.